Hello and welcome to Real Voices of Happy Valley. This episode features Dave talking to Les Gillon, fellow Scouser living in Hebden Bridge. Les has been seriously ill and managed between treatments to record his latest album, Les Gillon and the Agents of Karma, The Underground Sessions. Les is a seasoned, well-respected musician, and he is a reminder of how lucky we are in the valley to have access to so many venues playing original music.
Here we are, sitting with a lovely view with Les Gillon of Les Gillon and the Agents of Karma. Yeah. I'll ask you about the band in a moment. But first of all, how are you? How's your health these days?
Well, thanks for asking, Dave. Actually, my health is very good and improving. Some people might know that I had a very serious illness the year before last that put me out of action for quite a long time. So I was diagnosed with cancer. I had chemo for a couple of months, and then I had a break to recover from chemo, and then I had an operation which was to... How much of the grisly details do your listeners want?
Basically want to know that you're healthy and you're looking good.
I had a very serious operation, which at Bradford Royal Infirmary, and they told me very proudly that it was the most serious and complex operation that they do there. So I felt quite honoured. But to be serious for a moment, National Health Service saved my life.
Yes.
And, you know, I was in hospital for 4 months. I was in intensive care for 2 months, for 2 weeks, sorry. Yeah. I had a 7-hour operation. Imagine if I was an American and how much I would have been billed for that.
Yes.
I mean, the NHS saved my life, and I will be forever grateful to the NHS, and I will I will fight to the death anyone who tries to take it away from us.
Absolutely. Well, there's that old joke about that TV series Breaking Bad. Yeah, if they'd made it in the UK, it would have been diagnosed with cancer, went to hospital, got sorted, end of series.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, well, but actually the illness is relevant to the record. We've got this record coming out, got a launch at Myvermoy Community Centre on Saturday the 22nd of February.
Yeah.
And, but the album, you're a Scout, so this goes back to the days of the Beatles' first album, in that they recorded it in a day.
Yeah. And
this album was recorded in a day, because I had this gap between the end of chemo and going into hospital for the operation. I knew the operation was going to knock me out for months, and I had these songs, and I didn't have the luxury of being able to go into the studio for weeks because I knew I didn't have that time. So I had the concept of going into the studio for one day, gathering around me a group of brilliant musicians and just playing it live in the studio. We recorded the whole thing live in the studio. And it doesn't have the technical perfection of, a Taylor Swift album. But what I think it has is an incredible spirit, because there was, for me, the emotion of this, and I think for the other musicians as well, the vibe of this being one time, this special thing. I wasn't sure what the outcome of the op was going to be, so I wanted to get some music down and make it real, so it was a brilliant experience. It was fantastic.
Yes, I mean, so it's a live sound, basically.
Yeah, I mean, we recorded it at the Underground. Sam Greenwood engineered for us, which is, he's always brilliant and very fast worker.
Yeah.
He just knows how to make things happen quite quickly. So here I was lucky enough to live in a place, to live in Hebden Bridge, where we had a great studio with a great engineer and a bunch of great musicians, and I could bring it all together and make something, I think, quite special in one day. And that was what I did.
Right, that's a fantastic way to do it.
Yeah, I mean,
it's going back a while since like the Beatles and other people did that.
It is, yeah. I mean, Dylan used to record his albums in a day. And, I'm not comparing myself to Beatles or to Dylan, but I do think sometimes when music is pieced together on computers, some of that spontaneity, some of the realness of musicians playing together in a room and vibrating the air around them with their instruments and their voices, and that being captured. A recording is, the word recording, it's recording something that happens. Whereas I think a lot of records these days are not actually recording something that's happened. It's creating something within a computer or within a sampler.
Yes, and overdubs, and it can take forever.
Yeah, and the drums may not be real, and the bass may not be real, and so the sort of kind of authenticity of approaching it in that raw way, it kind of connects with folk traditions as well, which I think which matters to me.
Absolutely. I mean, as you know, I've sort of always been involved with live music without being a musician, and the live aspect makes it unique because you, however you sound on this album, you as a group of people could do the same songs the following week and they'd be slightly different.
Absolutely. I used to love that about live concerts, that, and I still love it about smaller scale gigs. You can go to a gig, and again, we're incredibly lucky in this valley to have a whole range of small, it's independent venues week, isn't it?
That's
small
right.
Venues that host original music. And you can go and see a band at the Trades or Golden Lion or Grace and Unity, Puzzle, The Blind Pig. Sorry if I missed anyone out.
Well, increasingly, there's Mythen Road Community Centre.
And you will see something that you and I used to see back in the 1970s and 80s, where you felt as though the show you were getting would never be repeated.
Yeah.
Whereas everything's so choreographed in stadium gigs these days, where everything's choreographed to lighting cues, and it's you can take a peek at the mixing desk and you can see, what time the gig's going to start, what time it's going to finish, how long the encore's going to be, how many encores there are going to be. Everything is nailed down. The in-between songs chat is the same as they did last night and the same as they'll do the night after. Yeah. So you lose some of that spontaneity, which I think is one of the things that I always valued. I always loved live albums as well. It was, all my favourite albums were live albums rather than studio.
Though I haven't said that, some of them are not as live as people think they are.
No, there's some infamous cases.
Yes.
Thin Lizzy, Live and Dangerous.
That's the one I was in my mind. I've just been reading Cowboy Song, a biography of Lynott. And I've just passed the chapter where it actually talks about that album. But I know what you mean. I mean, generally, I love it. I mean, I've run the gigs at the Trades Club. I've worked at festivals, and lots of times, I talk to people. That was a great gig. I want to buy the album, and they buy a studio CD, and it's not the same as the experience they've just had.
No, absolutely. This is in danger of me just reminiscing about gigs that I saw years ago.
Absolutely. Well, tell us about the musicians. Jen Trott.
Jen Trott is one of the difficulties of of playing in a band with great musicians is that they all play in 4 different bands.
Yes.
So you've got to get them together. That can be difficult. So Jan, as well as her work as a musician, she's a full-time musician. She's a full-time music teacher. So she runs the Jiggery Folkery sessions for youngsters, teaching them folk music. She plays in the Revelator band, which is Gothic blues. My brother Pete plays in that band as well. And she plays, I think she's playing with Des Horsfall in Kushti Rai at the moment.
Oh, is she? I didn't realise that.
And
every time I see Des, he's got different musicians with him.
That's true. And I also play with her. I mean, the reason I was able to recruit her into the Agents of Karma was that I play with her in a band called Ghost School with Andy Greaves. So, which again is sort of folk music. So that's really, she's got all this. If I may use the pun about a violin, she's got different strings to her bow.
Yes.
And I think the same is true of Julia Farrance. Julia is our cellist, and she plays gypsy jazz, and she plays classical, and she does sort of really off the wall experimental music as well. So she's working in a variety of different contexts with a variety of different people. You mentioned Dave Nelson. Dave Nelson just
Mr. Jazz locally.
Mr. Jazz, but who is also a classically trained pianist.
Yes.
So again, one of the common denominators of the musicians I've mentioned is that they can all they're all classically trained and can read music, which, let's face it, not all of us can.
No.
and yet they can improvise and make up their own parts. And actually, it's rare for musicians to have both those, those sides. Also, on the recording, we had Alex McCoon and Nessie Berry, who I knew from them singing. Well, I'd briefly played in a band where Alex played drums, and I knew Alex and Nessie from them singing at various open mics and events, and their voices just go beautifully together. And Nessie is a really nice guitarist as well, so I recruited them into the band outside the. We'd gone to the Hebden Bridge Cinema to see Summer of Soul, and then I bumped into them outside and I said, "Do you want to join a band?" And we had a few drinks, and they said, "Yeah." Sadly, they've got other commitments and they're not playing with us anymore. But we have Andrew Duncan playing with us, and Andrew again, he plays with the Abrasive Pheasants. And he plays with Fire Tower 4, which is how I met him, and he also does solo gigs as a pianist. So getting musicians as skilled and as flexible and as overcommitted as these, and getting them together. I was lucky to get them in the studio for one day, to be frank.
Yes, you get them all together on the same day is amazing. Me and Viv used to be agents, and you'd have people like Pat Along and Daz, sousaphone. And trying to get them together. Get their band a gig, Red Hippo, get them a gig, and then can you get them all together on the same night?
That's it. People's diaries, that was it, But so you have to plan these things quite a long way in advance. But I've been, as I say, I feel blessed that I've got these great musicians to play with who I write the songs. That's not a Barry Manilow cover, but I write.
He stole your line.
He did. But I would write the songs for the band. But very often, what they are is I'm singing a melody, a set of words, have got some chords, and then they take it, and the arrangements are collectively put together, and I really value that kind of collegiate way of making music.
Yes, that's fantastic. To be honest, you've been around a while. Excuse me, in the music scene. So these guys would want to do this with you anyway.
Well, they didn't refuse me, which is nice. I've known Dave, for decades, but I've never played with him before.
Have you not?
No, never. So I don't think I've even ever jammed with him. Oh, I tell a lie. We were. I did adept for the bass player when he was playing in the Terry Logan band, and I sat in for a few gigs because they were short of a bass player. But aside from that, we'd never kind of worked together consistently. So this has been absolutely brilliant.
Oh, that's fantastic. Have you still got Ghost School as well? Or?
Yeah, still got Ghost School, and so Ghost School I play with Jen Trott on violin, and with Andy Greaves. And Andy, me and Andy kind of go back decades as well. We used to sit around and jam together when he was in. Do you remember the Chinese Gangster Element? They were great favourites of John Peel, and a lot of people feel as though they should have gone further than they did. They were an absolutely brilliant band. They was, I suppose you'd call it post-punk. Andy has always had this folky side to him. I suppose the underlying thing about folk and punk is that they're both the music of the people, aren't they?
Yes.
They're not elite music. They're music from the fields and from the streets and from the towns and from the villages. And so me and Andy have always had this sort of folky thing going on. We used to play with Becky Taylor, and we used to just sit around and strum old folk songs, and now we do it quite a lot. The Ruth Garzeel trio, I'm also hanging out with Dave on that as hair backing band. So if you've not had,
still remarkably busy there.
yeah, well that's it. I've been, I've always been a musician, and I suppose for the last few decades I've been involved in music teaching. So I taught music at the university.
I was going to ask you about the courses you ran at UCLan.
Yes, sadly they're now coming to an end because I think the prevailing ideology is that science, technology, engineering, mathematics are the only things of any value. And don't want to go too overtly political here, Dave, but you know what I'm like. So all of those creative subjects are being stripped out of the curriculum in state schools, and you can tell they are because they're being massively invested in private schools. So private schools, acting, dance, music, creative arts, they're investing massively in those to differentiate their offering from what's happening in state schools. But for universities, we're finding that there isn't the encouragement in schools for people to go into education that is creative. And there's this belief that we can just become a nation of accountants and technocrats and scientists and mathematicians, which, in my own view, it's going to be creative people who are going to be needed in the future. And
it's a bit like you were saying about the creation of this album. It takes the soul out of the world, doesn't it?
It does.
Yeah, and creative subjects, creative people put the soul back in. It's bad enough in many ways. I mean, we're going back to the sort of 70s and 80s when we were in Huyton, and there was mass unemployment in that area, and lots of young people on benefits.
Yeah.
They learned how to play guitars.
Absolutely.
I mean, I know some of them ran a bit wild in the streets, but some of them learned how to play guitars and formed bands.
Absolutely.
And that was the time of punk and what have you, as you said, the people's music. And they were able to create it. And that was sort of taken away from a lot of working class kids when you have to spend 30 hours a week applying for jobs. What was the course you were running there?
Well, it changed. It changed its name a few times from music to music practice to some more highfalutin names. But essentially, it was a course in creating music. It was a creative course. I don't know if any of your listeners have seen Mobius Loop, but they were graduates of ours. And,
I didn't realise that. I know them.
And quite a lot of our students have gone on to play music professionally, or to be involved professionally in the music industry, or to teach music as well. So we thought it was. We thought we were involved in something really exciting when we were there, and some of my colleagues, Simon Partridge, is one of them, who's again quite well known on the music scene, and who was actually a student on the course before he was a tutor.
Oh, right.
So there was a kind of a developmental process where people were coming onto the course and then discovering new aspects of their own musicality, which I retired from the course when I had ill health.
Yeah.
And also, I was getting on a bit, so, I hadn't thought about retiring, but when you have, a health emergency, it makes you think that there's more to life. And as a result, I'm able to play more music than I've ever played, because one of the things about teaching music is that your own practice tends to take a back seat, because you're facilitating other people.
Yeah, and a lot of musicians are in that situation of being music teachers as well, and touring and summer holidays.
Absolutely,
Yes, it's quite. I was running a quite overlapping but quite different course in Manchester, and it was event management.
Yeah.
Whereas it was like you've got people helping you improve your guitar or singing skills and what have you, and the section I was doing was how to organise the gigs and festivals and things. Because it's great being able to play, but if you can get the gigs as well.
Absolutely. And I'm as guilty as any other musician, but most musicians are pretty useless at that side of things. You have to force yourself to learn, and if you can get onto a course where you're learning how to the business side of it, then that's a real benefit. I shared a business course. I taught it on an MA in music business with my colleague Tony Rigg, who is quite a hard nose, comes from a hard-nosed music industry. It was amazing, that me as a musician and him as a kind of music industry manager, we agreed on so many things. He saw music as one of his favourite words, how do we monetize this? How do we monetize this? And he saw music as an opportunity to make money, and I saw making money as an opportunity to make more music. But actually, those two objectives were completely in harmony, because unless you can make the music sustainable, then having to work in a day job and then try and run a band, in your spare time, and not being able to devote yourself to the event management side of it, it just makes life very difficult.
When we had our agency, it was very much because I've tried all sorts of instruments, and if I have a disability, it's not being able to perform, not being able to make music. So I always thoroughly enjoyed enabling other people to do it. So I'm aware of how important that is, but I also always thought, if these guys can write the songs, perform the music, and pay their bills.
Yeah.
And I can help them with that. That's bringing the music and the business together.
Absolutely, yeah. It's such a vital part, the sustainability of the music, and that's really supporting music. And, that's what it's about.
Yeah.
The life of the musician who wants to do their own music or plough their own furrow, doesn't want to necessarily play in function bands or tribute bands. That's really difficult. It's I won't say easy, but it's not impossible to sustain a good living playing in tribute bands, cover bands, function bands, wedding bands. That's it's much harder if you're trying to do your own material.
Yes, I mean I know people who make most of their income from playing in those sorts of bands.
Yeah,
and do their own stuff
on the side.
Make relatively little.
And again, it's one subsidises the other. But I mean, just in Independent Venue Week, I'll just tell this little story. I mentioned some of the independent venues that we've got in Calder Valley, around Hebden Bridge, Todmorden, Halifax, Sulby Bridge, Mythenroyd, that are putting on original music. I played a gig with a guy from Halifax, Paul Robinson. Some people might remember him, Robbo. Fabulous keyboard player, guitarist, singer, songwriter, and he makes his living playing covers. You'll see him around here sometimes, and he'll just turn up at a pub, and he's got his keyboard and his guitar, and he's got a load of songs from the 70s, 80s, 90s, all good stuff. He's a fabulous singer, great entertainer, but he can't really do his own stuff at those kind of gigs. But he's also got the Paul Robinson Band, which is doing original material, and I invited them to support one of the bands I was playing in, and they all live all over the north of England, and they sort of travelled kind of, I don't know, 30, 40, 50 miles to play this gig at the Blind Pig, and they played this support slot, and they were absolutely brilliant. I was chatting to Robbo afterwards, said that was great, he's in Nottingham. So I said, we'll return the favour, we'll come over and we'll play support for you in Nottingham. And he said, there aren't any gigs in Nottingham. I said, are you joking? He said, no, you can't get original music on. And I think one of the things we don't necessarily appreciate fully is how much this area supports creative musicians, and how very often, even in some quite large towns and cities, it's very difficult to do anything but covers and tribute acts. So
it's scary that a place the size of Nottingham has not got its own small venues.
He said there's one that specialises in Americana, but there's very, very, he was amazed at how many original music venues there are in our area. So we need to value them, we need to support them.
And we need to celebrate that fact.
Yeah, absolutely.
And bemoan the fact that it's not that normal elsewhere.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thanks a lot, Les. That's really interesting
It's
stuff.
been great talking to you.
Yeah. Yes.
Do you think Yorkshire people will understand our accents? Do you think they'll cope with that?
Yeah, they do until we try and pronounce things.
Yeah, my mum used to struggle with the term Mythenroyd, Mathilmeroid. She used to go with,
You haven't really arrived until you can say Mythenroyd. It took me 18 months. So. Yeah, I think I thought when I first saw it written down, I thought it was somewhere in Wales.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. So we better finish off with hearing Les Gillon and the Agents of Karma. This is Everything is Jazz.
out of tune. But pretty soon we'll see the light. That's right. 'Cause everything is jazz these days. Yes, everything is jazz these days. I love your funk and your rock and roll. I love your punk rock and I love your soul. Your electronica's out of sight. That's right. 'Cause everything is jazz these days. Yes, everything is jazz these days. A pork pie hat, a mohair suit, two-tone loafers or a Chelsea boot. My shirt is black and my tie is white. That's right. 'Cause everything is jazz these days. Yes, everything is jazz these days. Sun in February, snow in June. Four seasons playing a little out of tune. But pretty soon we'll see the light. That's right. 'Cause everything